Yes, sir.
Hello?
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
So this is the new literatures. Okay. When we talk about new literatures, we have to take into account three things. We have heard about British literature or English literature, American literature. That was in singular. But now we are listening, we are going to have new literatures. So this new literature appears quite new, isn't it? Students, I want your response. Pooja, I want your response, please. Hello, am I audible to all of you? Hello. Hello.
Yes, sir, you are very much audible. Kindly continue.
Okay. Okay. So we have new literatures here, and this is rather a new phenomenon for all of us. And when we think about British literature or English literature or even American literature, we read only or we dealt with only one singular literature like British literature or American literature. But now we have a coterie of literatures, and they become new because they appear new because we have to write about our own literature, and how we will justify this term new literature is very significant now. And with this new literature is an offshoot of your Commonwealth countries, and you all know that they have of recent origin, especially in 20th century, and they all began with this immediately after the Second World War. You know that many erstwhile colonies got mm, independent, their respective independence from the British colony, and we have here India and Africa, then your West Indies, Australia, New Zealand, all these countries together, they produce something, and this they together they are called this new literature. Okay. Now, when you think about new, you have to justify what new things are there. And you know that everything is written in English, but the thinking is indigenous. For example, when Salman Rushdie wrote his Midnight Children, which is there in your course of study, he spoke about many things. Many Hindi idiomatic things are being included in that epoch-making novel, and that became a Booker novel, or it won the Booker Awards and Booker Awards for the second time. And here we get a kind of amalgamation of this English and our indigenous Hindi. Many things are there, and okay, we have to just include all the things, and when we think about Commonwealth literature before 1964, it was not there. The coinage Commonwealth literature was by Jeffers. He was the professor of Leeds University. For the first time, this Commonwealth literature or the coinage of the term came into origin in the year 1964. Before that, we had things written by Indians, things written by the African people, African writers, the things written by even Australian writers. But the problem here is they couldn't write something original. That's why they were quite imitative of the British literature. And here we have to defend our. You have to. Am I clear to all of you? Am I clear to all of you, students? Hello. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Am I clear to all of you? Audible to all of you?
Okay, sir.
Okay. So we are discussing about Commonwealth literature, and the term itself came into existence in the year 1964 in an address by Professor Jeffers of Leeds University. Okay, and after that, it was just hijacked by our the colonies, erstwhile colonies, which were under British rule, and got independence now. And here, I would like to tell you one thing, that when you read your literature, your own literature, you become monotonous, or you know only one thing. But when you read different literatures, like your new Englishes, new literatures, what you know is more than what you could expand your horizon. You can come across with so many interesting things, because when you have one choice, your choice is limited. But when you are provided with so many choices, like so many literatures, you can choose the best one. That is one advantage you have when you come to deal with the Commonwealth literature. You take so many choices with you. You win so many choices. Like when you go to a shop, for example, to buy a dress, you if you go to a mall, you have so many choices, and you can choose from that. Similarly, here Commonwealth literature gives you so many choices. You can have a choice from African literature. You can have a choice from your say West Indian literature, Australian literature, Indian literature, Asian literature. Everything is included there. So you have many choices. Now it is Matthew Arnold. Matthew Arnold, do you know? Students, I am asking you about Matthew Arnold, a very famous critic, English critic of 19th century. Matthew Arnold, a Victorian critic. Okay, his name is Matthew Arnold, and he said that if you are provided with one literature, your choices are limited. That's why he says, I'm just referring to quoting his line, Matthew Arnold's line. He says, the more unlike one's own, the better. The more unlike one's own, better. That means if you are exposed to other literatures, like your Canadian literature, African literature, your say West Indian literature, Caribbean literature, or Australian literature, you have so many choices. That's why it says the more unlike one's own means when you are removed from your own literature, you have the scope of reading other literatures. That's why the better. So this is the quotation by Matthew Arnold, the British critic, Victorian critic, who for the first time advocated for literatures more than the indigenous literature or literature of its one's own. So this is Commonwealth literature for you, and it came to existence in the year 1964, and they formed the Association of Commonwealth Literature and Language Studies in that year, and in this broad category of Commonwealth literature, we have literatures of so many erstwhile colonies who were under British rule, and we got so many references here, and here we got a kind of choice, and that choice gives us a kind of competition, and when competition is there, you can get many things. So this is about Commonwealth literature. Then we'll move to the second thing. Commonwealth literature was not the coinage or the term is no more in use now. We have post-colonial literature now, and then we'll come to third world literature, or the literature of the other, the literature of the subaltern. Okay, so all these terms, all these categories are being used here, and we will come to know about all these things in the subsequent say 1.5 hours, and I hope you will follow me properly. Am I clear to you? Am I audible to you, students?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Do you understand things what I say, or I will explain a little further? Do you understand what I say? Students, I am asking you. Otherwise, I will have.
Yes, sir.
I will try to explain it again. And you things are clear to you. Okay. Now we will move to how Commonwealth literature included everything. Why should we have Commonwealth literature instead of British literature? Okay. Now, British literature has contributed, or English literature that we have already read has contributed many things for us. For example, the English language that they taught us, and you know about Macaulay and his contribution, his famous method about India and the English language, and English were taught to us in order to have a better communication with them, with the British people, and in order to have a more trade and commerce. But there, what happened is sometimes that English which they taught to us became a bone of contention, a kind of opposition to them, and this is the very language that we use to fight against them, because whatever they wrote about India, or whatever they wrote about the erstwhile countries, erstwhile colonies, they had a kind of distorted version. Okay, they wanted to write about India or other colonial countries from their point of view. That was the problem with all of us. And now, with this Commonwealth literature, we wanted to have our own version of each and every aspect. We used English language, but that English language was not their version. We borrowed their language, but wrote our version, our original thinking, our original thought went into the writing through English language. This is the transition. This is the important thing that we have when we used this language. Okay, this literature through Commonwealth literature or through post-colonial literature or through your third world countries literature or through the literature of the other. Okay, what we have is we have our version through their language. This is the important thing. And how we could achieve that? Because we were taught by them, we learned their language and fought against them with this weapon of language. And we wanted to reject their version of writing, and we wanted to write our own version. That is very, very important in case of this Commonwealth literature. Now, when we come to the Commonwealth literature, again, there are so many differences between the literature of India, the literature of Africa, the literature of Australia, the literature of Caribbean or West Indies, New Zealand. What are the differences and how they came together? They came together with the simple thing that they are under British rule for some time. They were erstwhile colonies. Okay, but they wrote differently because the culture is different, the language is different, the history is different. That's why each country, each writer wanted to have his own roots. They were rooted to their soil. They didn't want to have others' version. They wanted to have their version. That is why they were original in thinking, but the language is English. That's why we had one weapon. We used their language through our idiom, because thinking is ours, but language is theirs. That is why we have a kind of indigenous thinking, and this thinking went into the writing of each and everybody or each and every writer that came under this group or this broad coinage of Commonwealth literature. Now we will have something about this post-colonial literature, which is a kind of development of a sort of development of this Commonwealth literature. Some people had the objection about this name Commonwealth because it has, whether you want or not, it has some association with this erstwhile the British colony or the British Raj, the imperialism. That's why they wanted to write up this word Commonwealth, and they said the post-colonial, because colony, after the colonial rule, we have post-colonial or post-colonial criticism, post-colonial writing. So we have a kind of shift from colonial criticism to post-colonial criticism, or colonial writing to post-colonial writing. And here what happened is this post-colonial writing or post-colonial criticism gave a kind of freedom to the writers to discuss things on their own. They do not want to have anything which was not their own. They wanted to write about their own writing, or they wanted to write about their own feeling, or indigenous thoughts, indigenous thinking, indigenous history, culture, everything. And so we have here a kind of feeling which is very rooted to the soil. And before that, what happened is the just were quite imitated. Someone told that they are like Hardy. They imitated Thomas Hardy, William Wordsworth, these people. But now, what happened is they wanted to write about their own thing, own culture, own history. So this is a kind of thinking that we have right now with us, and post-colonial writing gave this or the term post-colonial or post-colonial criticism gave them the tool or the weapon with which they fought with the writing of the erstwhile colonies. So here what happened is when you say post-colonial, we remember so many thinkers here. We have your Edward Said, then your Homi Baba, you have Gayatri Spivak, and from Africa you have Franz Fanon, then you have your writers from Nigeria, your Chinua Achebe, and you have writers from West Indies, George Lamming, and even from Australia, Peter Berry. All these writers, they, your Salman Rushdie, as a writer, as a novelist, also projected something indigenous, which was quite attractive, and which became a kind of thing that attracted the uh, people of the colony. And here we know that many Booker Prize winners were from India or even Australia. Peter Carey won Booker Prize, and you have Chinua Achebe here. You have your Kotiji from South Africa. You have so many West Indian writers, even your B.S. Naipaul, who has connection with both India, West Indies, and your Mithai. All these writers had a kind of thinking, a kind of mixed thinking. That's why the term hybridity comes here. And what hybridity means is the mixture of many things and many cultures. Excuse me. So here we come to know about something about post-colonial literature and post-colonial writing. Who are the writers? Who are the thinkers? I have told you about that. I again repeat the name. We have Edward Said and your Homike Ba and Gayatri Chakrabarti Spivak. These are the writers from the Asian continent, and we have writers like your Franz Fanon, who may be regarded as the father of your African criticism, and he gave a kind of feeling how to write things highlighting indigenous culture, indigenous history. Here, I would like to point out one thing that when you compare the African literature with that of Indian literature, or say Asian literature, there is one vital difference here. When we talk about African literature, they have got independence after India. Say Nigeria got independence in the year 1963, or even your well, maybe some say 3, 13, 16 years after India got independence. But when we think about the literature, they frequently write about their own language. They do not want, they do not hesitate to write about their own culture, their own language. You know that Chinua Achebe of Nigeria wrote in his own Igbo language, and when we write something, we want to write in English. We do not want to write anything in Odia, and that becomes our problem, because even if you know something, you have to choose in which language you are good at while writing. When you express your feeling, for example, when you use or when you use a language for reading something or writing something, you have to be very, very clear about what you are doing or in which language you are good at. When you think about a language which is quite different from your own, it's very difficult to acquire everything or every positive thing that a language offers to you. That's why it's better to begin with your own language. Then you can acquire the essentials of the other language, no problem. But the problem is, we are neither good at our own language nor good at the language of a foreign land. That becomes our problem. That is why what you should do is, first, whatever language you want to acquire, you can, provided you must know the thorough or the ABC of each and every language. That's why excuse me. So whenever you want to do something, or whenever you want to acquire mastery over a language, you have to think about the essentials, or you have to think about which language you are good at. No matter your mother tongue, or no matter your the English, or no matter the language, official language, or something else. But what African did, as we were talking about African literature and Indian literature, the difference between African literature and Indian literature. One example will give you the difference here. When an African writer writes, he doesn't hesitate writing about his own culture. He writes freely about his own culture, and he writes in his own language. And if he knows English, it's better. He can translate it into English. His own version, he can translate it. But here in India, what happens is, even if I know Odia well, I do not want to have mastery over that language, or rather I hesitate to talk or write in Odia language. And sometimes, I have forgotten the alphabets because of not using that language anymore. So that's a kind of injustice to your own language. And when you think about your originality, your own culture, your own history, that becomes a hindrance, that becomes a stumble block. That's why whenever you want to do something, do not just neglect your own language. You can acquire a language, a foreign language, or you can acquire the basics of everything, but not at the expense of your own language. And this is the basic difference here between the Indian writers and the African writers. They do not hesitate to write, or they do not hesitate to highlight their own culture, own history. But here in India, we try to imitate, even if we have got independence earlier than them. But what, what the problem here is, we hesitate a little bit. We try to get popularity, instant popularity, or popularity overnight. That's why we try to imitate what the English masters did before all. That is the problem. Why we are neither good at our own language nor good at the language that we have acquired or we have mastered or we try to master over it, English language. That becomes our problem. So time has now come. It's high time we recognize our own abilities, our own indigenous thinking. And this indigenous thinking or thinking of your own culture and your own identity, your own thought and literature is the highlight of post-colonial literature, nothing else. That's why, and one vital difference between the African writers and the Indian writers or writers of this subcontinent is that whenever they want to write about something, they are quite bold. They write boldly about that. They have the courage in them to write about that. But when an Indian writer, for that matter, writes about the same theme, he is a bit hypocritical. I'm not against Indian. I'm proud to be an Indian. But the problem is when we are talking about post-colonial literature, you have to think about Indian writers. You have to think about our own weaknesses. Without accepting your own weakness, you cannot just prosper. You cannot just have the room for improvement. That's why if you are weak, you have to accept that these are our vulnerabilities. Okay? So here, they, they got India got its own independence. But here, what happens is they wrote everything using their indigenous thinking, indigenous writing, indigenous culture, all these things. But it may take some time for Indians, or Indians may take some time to get to the level of African writers, because this indigenous culture or the culture of one's own identity or one's own history, they have used it perfectly, but we have lagged behind. We have not catched up with them till now. That becomes our Achilles heel, or that becomes our problem right now. And we have to overcome that problem sooner or later. The sooner, the better for us. Okay? Now, then we go to the other thing, that how Australian writers or writers from Australian continent wrote about their own culture. Because whenever you think about post-colonial writing, you have to think about each and every writer. This is the general class. That becomes a problem for all of you, because you have to just amalgamate, you have to just mix up with every culture and everything, and that becomes our problem here. And whenever you go to the Australian writing, for example, the writing of Peter Carey got a Booker Prize for his novel, and right now I don't remember his novel properly. Maybe tomorrow I'll give you a broad picture, because I don't have a whiteboard and I couldn't use it. And maybe tomorrow I can use a software device, and show you writing, so that you can just note down something, and that will help you while preparing for your examination. And whenever we talk about the writing from Australia, they also write quite boldly. They also write quite courageously. They do not want to just have a cover up. They are not hypocritical people. Indians try to hide something. They do not want to throw their hat in the open. That becomes our problem with Indians, but not with the Australian writers. They never think about their own problem. They just write boldly about whatever they want to write. Here, I will give you an example from the Indian novel Kantapura, which you have in your course of study, perhaps. And here, when Murthy is the character, one character, maybe the protagonist of the novel, he writes, he takes the side of the untouchables in that novel. Untouchables. What happens is, his mother is quite antagonistic. He wants to oppose. Sia wants to oppose her. Her mother, his mother wants to oppose her, oppose him. Sorry, why? Because here Murthy is against his culture. Murthy doesn't want to side with his mother's wish. But what his mother says is to accept his culture, to accept his society. But Murthy goes against it. He goes to take the side of the untouchables. And this individuality is being sacrificed here. What I want to highlight here is, in Indian literature, we find one thing: individuality is being sacrificed at the cost of society. We are not individuals. Whenever we want to say something, we are considering our parents' prestige, our parents' honor, and that's why we have so many. Perhaps we have so many honor killings here in India, and whenever an Australian writes it, whenever a South African person writes it, or whenever even a West Indian novelist like George Lamming writes it, he writes from the point of the protagonist's individuality, not from the point of view of the society. That is a vital difference, and we must know about it at the earliest, and that becomes an Achilles heel with the Indian people. So here we have come to a kind of discussion about our Indian novelists or Indian writing, South African writing, your Australian writing, then your writing from West Indies, so or Caribbean writing. So in a nutshell, I want to say that all these things, all these writings have given us a kind of choice, a kind of alternative. From them we can choose the best representation or the best kind of writing, and we have a kind of choice here. Then we'll go to the next item, and that is the literature of the subaltern or subaltern literature, which is the brainchild of your Gayatri Chakrabarti Spivak, the famous critic from India, who has given a kind of dimension to this subaltern literature from within of the peripheral literature, which is very much contention in 20th century. And when you talk about subaltern literature, the term subaltern has in a prison house. You might well remember remember here that Italian philosopher Gramsci has used this term in using it for the prison house. Prisoners were treated as subaltern people because they were excluded from mainstream society, and they were rejected from society. That's why they went to prison, and whatever they wanted to have, they they as a respect other. So after that, you have is which is being referred to the subordinate status, subaltern. Now, the historians, some Indian historians, including your Gayatri Chakrabarti Spivak, referred to it as the histories of the subaltern. Okay, how the people were being marginalized, how the large continent of people being marginalized in these Asian countries. That was their main theme, and for the first time, Gayatri Chakrabarti Spivak in her famous essay, "Can the Subaltern Speak?" came into the open, and she talked about the marginalized people, how women and the lower caste people were being treated badly by the patriarchal setup or patriarchal hegemony or established hegemony, became the content of this subaltern literature. So here we come to know about one thing. When you talk about subaltern, when you we talk about the literature of the other or the literature of the marginal people, what is significant here is the point of view of the marginal people, not the hitherto we had protagonists from the upper caste or aristocratic setup. But when you think about the subaltern people, we don't talk about the protagonists here. We talk about the marginal characters, the characters who are being neglected or marginalized, or they don't get any kind of attention in the mainstream literature. So here what happens is those who didn't get any kind of attention earlier, they become the center stage here. And Gayatri Chakrabarti Spivak took the instance of a number of for instance, it took the example of Rup Kanwar, a Rajasthani woman who has been compelled to perform the rite of sati after her husband's death. And here, she performed that as a kind of honor. But Chakrabarti Spivak or Gayatri Spivak took this instance as a kind of marginal representation, and how women were being neglected, how women were being pushed to the periphery at the cost of the patriarchal hegemony. It became this central attraction here. So what we gain here in case of this literature of the subaltern or literature of the other, even the literature of the third world countries, is the writing of the marginal, writing of the neglected people, writing of how marginal people will hold the center stage. The neglected characters become become central here in case of the subaltern literature. And for example, when we talk about a novel like You Are Anantamurthy's Sanskar, here we have Pranasacharya, we have Naranappa, we have our Chandri. So, Chandri being vital or being important in the context of the novel, Sanskar becomes a marginal character. And you know about her caste. She is an untouchable. And what happens here is, before the subaltern literature came, Chandri's role was neglected. Chandri was an untouchable, even if she performed everything in the novel to restore the respect of her husband designate, Naranappa. She never got her due in the novel. But when we take the subaltern point of view, we can hail Chandri as the real heroine of the novel. Say, Chandri is not Chandri, the lower caste women. Chandri is like Chandrama. Okay, so the comparison between Chandrama and Chandri becomes vital here. The subaltern or untouchable lower caste Chandri is being compared with Chandrama here. So this comparison tries to restore the respect of the person who has suffered most in the novel, or the character who has done everything in the novel Sanskara here by You Are Anantamurthy. So here this is an example of say subaltern heroine who has been neglected till now. But with the coinage of the term subaltern, all marginal characters are being given their due respect and what they really deserve. And Chandri, in the same coin, in the same token, becomes the heroine of the novel, the real heroine of the novel, sidelining Pranasaracharya, sidelining even Naranappa, the rebel caste. Okay, now when we come to the literature of say your third world countries, the same thing is being said here, because when we compare between the Eastern and the Western perspectives, between the Western and the third world perspectives, they become the dominant strand. Western, whatever the Western people say, we without any hesitation imitate them. But what we do is we neglect, we forget our own culture. And when we think about third world countries' literature, third world countries' literature give importance to their own indigenous culture. They do not think about the first world representation. They reject the representation from the dominant Western mode of thinking. Here, what we want to do is there is a kind of mixture. We have our own culture, they have their own culture. The best thing that we should do is just try to get the essence from both the cultures, the Western culture and the Eastern culture, or the Indian culture, any culture that you, or any culture about which we read and write, or about which we know something. We must do one thing. We must accept what are the best things of the both the cultures, best things from both the cultures, because in that lies the greatness of a comprehending man, or that lies there lies the greatness of a man who is who is aware about, or who is open about everything that is best in the world. If we don't do that, we are being becoming partial. We are becoming parochial. We are becoming ghettoed. So the term used by Salman Rushdie, because we develop a kind of narrow mentality, like our the term cultural nationalism. In the name of nationalism, we develop a kind of bigotry. So these things must be rejected, and what we should remember, or what we should accept here, is the essence of both the cultures, alternative culture, or alternative paradigms, alternative realities being formed from these two cultures, neither best nor east. We have to just mm, get through the essence of these two cultures, and that's why there is a term alternative modernities by Satyapi Mahanti, a famous critic, who has said that post-colonial literature has not remained there. There, it has come out of that, and this alternative modernities helps us how to reach at the central things of cultures, and how to reject even bad things, or bad practices from our own culture. So that is why this is a kind of striking a middle course between what is best available in the world itself. So this alternative modernities is the latest development that we have in post-colonial literature, and there comes the literature of the author. So what is the literature of the other? Other again is a kind of marginal term. The marginal societies, or marginal people, are not getting their due. That's why the perspective of other, which is an offshoot of this post-colonial literature, helps us to understand the point of view of the marginal people. And what they get is, what they give us is a kind of perspective, a kind of feeling of a marginal literature, or marginal character, where the writing from Dalits, and the writing from the lower strata of life, people or writers from the lower strata of life, they can come to the mainstream, like writers like your Manoranjan Vyapari, and how he suffered a lot, and still now he's struggling hard for to earn his bread, or for meeting his daily needs. Still he writes, and his prison experiences, his Naxalite experiences, all these things we are coming to know about it. And he can be a representative author about whom we know now, and who has been in the who has been sidelined for a long time. And this is the literature of the other, and to have a kind of amalgamation or to have a kind of reconciliation of what we have said till now. We have discussed about Commonwealth literature, we have discussed about African literature, we have discussed about literature from Asian continent, we have discussed about New Zealand, literature from New Zealand, literature from Australia, literature from Caribbean, West Indies. So the essence, each country stands for itself. Each country, being geographically and historically special, has its own culture and indigenous thinking. So literature must be, or literatures from these countries must be different. But what unites them is they all are under, they were all were under British rule for some time. So here we can also include one thing, literature from Ireland, even though these countries got independence from the British, this country got independence from British rule, say before these colonial countries or colonized people. But what is important here is how W.B. Yeats writes it, how Simonson represents his own culture, even how Anna Bond from North Ireland represented in that Booker-winning novel, say Milkman in 2018, and all these things of literature from Ireland, they also wrote about their own culture, even if English is their language, native language. Their culture is different, and they differ from the British culture in a great way, and that's why by representing their own culture in a bold manner, in a courageous way, they have become post-colonial in a sense. They have given us a kind of representation through which we can take a cue, we can take a hint and move ahead. Now, what I want to say is we are perhaps nearing the end of today's deliberation, and I hope if you have any questions, we can discuss now. And dear students, if you have any questions, please come up with your questions. Students, can you hear me? Hello? Hello? No response from your side. Dear students, please come up with your questions so that we'll try to have some clarifications or some additions or some omissions. And this lecture is for you all, not for me, because I have already done what I want to do. You must come forward with your own questions. You might have so many doubts in your mind, and please come up with your doubts or questions or whatever you want to know from me. If you want to know something from me, please come up with your questions. Students. Hello, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Sir, I don't think the students are having any response.
Yeah, they are here, but they are not responding anything.
So how can we move